So in this video, I want to talk about the anatomy of a dart. So basically, in any pattern, we have roughly two shapes of darts. So you either have it this way, like your V shape or triangle shape here, which you find on the bodice or skirt pattern, and this usually ends at the side seam or the waist. Then we have the diamond shape. So this diamond shape is basically two triangles meeting at the middle. So you find this in bodice or dress patterns. So like you have it here, the top one is on the bodice, as the top of the pattern, while this bottom triangle is at the skirt part of the pattern. So when you are working with this, so I have this is my dress pattern, this is a skirt pattern. So when you are working with this, if you're asked to draw a dart, a 1-inch dart for example, what this means is that the space between the darts, let's say these 2 points represents the dart legs, it means the space between this point and this point is 1 inch. Then for you to be able to draw the dart apex, you know, depending on if the dart is on the front or the side or even on the top of the waistline, that's for the bodice or the skirt. But once you determine the dart depth you are using, you need to divide it into 2 so that you can draw your dart leg, which means that this, for a 1-inch dart, this part here is half an inch, this part here is half an inch. That makes a 1-inch dart. If you're working with a 2-inch dart, it means that by the time you draw your dart space, this is the dart space and this is 2 inches, and then you divide this into 2. That means on this part you have 1 inch, on this part you have another 1 inch, making up the 2 inches. Then depending on the depth again, you now use it to draw your dart legs and then get your apex. So this point here is called the dart apex, while these two sides here is called the dart legs. So we have the dart legs. Do you understand? So this is where the dart legs are ending. So you can have this as your waist seam, your side seam, you know, wherever the dart ends. So remember when we're working on our skirt pattern, in fact, before you start drafting your patterns, one of the things you need to do is watch the video first of all, then draft out, you know, measure out get your measurements, and then at least write out the dimensions you are going to use. So for the skirt pattern, what we did was we need waist measurement, the hip, waist to hip, and then the waist to knee measurement. So it's important you write this out before you start, because our box measures half waist plus 1 inch, half hip plus 1 inch by our waist to knee measurement. So which means from here to here, that's this top line is going to be half of our hip plus 1 inch is. Then the length of the pattern is the waist to knee measurement this way. So once you get this, remember half hip plus 1 inch, this is our waistline, and then this is our M, which is also the knee line. Then the length of the pattern is going to be the waist to knee measurement. So we now went further and divided this into 2 equal parts for the front pattern and then the back pattern. Of course, we measured our waist to hip measurement here, which ranges from 20 centimeters to, that's about 8 inches to maybe 9 inches, depending on the height and then the body size. So once we got this, now in order to get our waist measurement on this pattern, remember what we have here is half hip plus 1 is definitely bigger than our waist, half of our waist measurement. So for the front part, to get the waist measurement, I said waist divided by 4 plus 1/4 inch plus 1 inch dart. Do you understand? And then for this dart, meaning our dart is 1 inch, this 1/4 is only for ease, and then waist divided by 4. So this 1/4 is just to give our skirt a bit of ease at the waist, not too loose, not too tight, while this one is for the dart. This dart basically has shaping, because for fabric that doesn't stretch, you need that. If you are working with a stretchy fabric, which I don't advise, as you are beginner sewers, I don't advise you work with any fabric that is too stretchy for now. So but for our woven fabric that is not stretchy, we have to put that here. So by the time you are putting it that for the front, measure from your center front. Remember, this is CF and then this is CB. You are going to measure, I think it was 3.5 inches from center front, or you measure your half of your bust span. We'll get to this when we are drafting the bodice pattern. So working with our 3.5 inches, you measure 3.5 inches from center front here. Then you measure your 1 inch gap. So between this point and this point, this is our dart space. So to now get the depth of our dart, we need to divide this 1 inch gap into 2. So by dividing this 1 inch gap into 2, it means I have half an inch on this side and then half an inch on this side. So I will now connect it, down to get the dart apex. While for the back, this is the front. The back is waist all over 4 plus 1/4 is plus 1.5 inch, 1.5 inches for our dart. So the reason why we have this 1.5 inches is that at the center back, usually there's a bulge. Our center back is how do I put it? It goes inside. So we need to account for that. If you don't put a dart at center back, you have some sort of bulge at the back of your skirt. So that's why the first dart is at ½ inch from center back. So you measure ½ inch from center back and then connect this line to your hip line like this. So you connect it like this. Then to measure the 1 inch dart, remember center back has 1.5. So we've taken half from here. So to now get the 1 inch dart, measure from the original center back here. You measure 3.5 inches from the center back. You measure towards the side seam. Once you get the 3.5 inches, and then you mark your 1 inch gap for your dart. This is just from here to here is just 1 inch. And then you divide this into 2, which you now connect to your dart depth. So which you now connect to your dart apex for the back. So remember, this is ½ an inch and this side here is 1 inch, meaning ½ an inch on this side, ½ an inch on this side. So that is how you get your 1 inch dart. Before you now mark your waist like this and then your waist. So this waist measurement, that's from center front to the side seam, is waist divided by 4 plus 1/4 inch and then 1 inch for that. So assuming the waist is 28, for example, so 28 divided by 4 is 7. 7 plus 1/4 is 7.25 plus 1, that is 8.25. So that means from here to here is going to be 8.25. While for 8.25, that's 8 1/4. While for the back, this is going to be waist divided by 4, that is 7. 7 plus 1/4, 7.25. 1/4 is also equal to 0.25 plus 1.5. So this will give me 8.75. So that means from this original center back to my back side seam, I have 8.75 here. While on this side, I only have 8.25 here. So that's 8.25 inches for the front and then 8.75 inches for the back waist. This is the waist measurement. So before you start drafting, you can as well just get a paper and try to follow the video this way before you actually get your big pattern paper, so that this one, once you're able to draft to scale like this, you get the principle, the steps. It's easier for you to now translate this into your big pattern. So I advise you go through this method first, write everything down. Once you write it down, it's easy to figure out where everything is supposed to be. Thank you.